The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the world outside into a gray, soggy mess that made 22-year-old Danny grateful to be inside his small rental house. It was Friday night, and he'd planned to spend it exactly as he wanted, gaming online with his friends until the early hours of the morning, with no work or classes to worry about the next day. The house wasn't much to look at from the outside, a modest one-bedroom in the cheapest part of town, but it was his first place living completely alone, and that made it special. The downstairs was just a living room and kitchen, with a narrow staircase leading up to his bedroom and a tiny bathroom. Simple, but perfect for a college student on a tight budget. Danny had been gaming for about 2 hours when the first thump came from upstairs. He paused his game and listened, expecting to hear the telltale sound of water dripping from a ceiling leak. The rain had been relentless, and he'd already found one small leak in the bathroom earlier that week. But when he went upstairs to investigate, both his bedroom and the bathroom were bone dry. No signs of water damage, no wet spots on the ceiling, no explanation for the sound he'd heard. Danny shrugged it off and returned to his game, losing himself in the virtual world where things made sense and had clear rules. The guys signed off around 2 in the morning, and Danny settled on the couch with a bag of chips and his phone, planning to watch YouTube videos until he got sleepy. That's when he heard the second thump. This one was different, more deliberate, like something heavy had been deliberately dropped rather than accidentally knocked over. And it definitely came from upstairs, somewhere above his bedroom. Danny muted his phone and listened carefully, but the house had returned to its normal silence. He decided to do a more thorough investigation this time, checking every corner of both upstairs rooms. The bedroom was exactly as he'd left it, unmade bed, clothes scattered on the floor, textbooks stacked on his desk. The bathroom was spotless, with no signs of any problems. But the sound had definitely come from above this area. Standing in his bedroom, Danny looked up at the ceiling and really examined it for the first time since moving in. The house was old, probably built in the 1940s, with that popcorn ceiling texture that was popular back then. But as he studied it more carefully, he noticed something odd. The ceiling in his bedroom seemed lower than the one in the bathroom, even though they should be the same height. Curiosity now fully aroused, Danny went outside into the pouring rain to look at the house from the street. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. There, partially hidden by the large oak tree that grew close to the side of the house, was a small window he'd never noticed before. A window that was higher up than his bedroom ceiling, which could only mean one thing. There was an attic. An attic he'd never known existed. Back inside, soaking wet and shivering, Danny began searching for access to this hidden space. It took him 20 minutes of careful examination before he found it, in his bedroom closet, a section of the ceiling that was slightly different from the rest. When he stood on a chair and pressed upward, a small panel lifted away, revealing a narrow opening in the bottom rungs of a folding ladder. The smell hit him immediately, a musty, organic odor that made his stomach turn. It was the smell of someone who hadn't bathed in a long time, mixed with the scent of rotting food and human waste. Danny gagged and almost fell off the chair. But worse than the smell was the sound that came next, a shuffling movement from somewhere in the darkness above, followed by what could only be described as a low, animalistic grunt. There was someone up there. Someone who had been living in his attic for God knew how long, just feet above his head while he slept, ate, studied, and lived his life completely unaware of their presence. Danny's hands shook as he climbed down from the chair and backed away from the closet. His mind raced with horrible questions. How long had they been up there? Had they been watching him through cracks in the ceiling? Did they come down when he wasn't home? Had they touched his things, his food, his bed? Another thump from above made the decision for him. Danny grabbed his phone and ran outside, not even bothering to put on shoes. He called 911 from his driveway, explaining the situation to a dispatcher who seemed to have trouble believing what she was hearing. "Sir, you're saying there's someone living in your attic?" "Yes. I can hear them moving around up there. I think they've been there for weeks, maybe longer. I had no idea there even was an attic until tonight." The police arrived within 10 minutes, and Danny watched from across the street as they entered his house with flashlights and radios crackling. He could see the beams of their flashlights moving through the upstairs windows, and then, after about 5 minutes, he saw more lights coming from that small window he discovered, the attic window. It took them another 10 minutes to coax the person down. Danny watched in horrible fascination as a man emerged from his house in handcuffs, a thin, dirty figure with wild hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in months. The man kept looking back at the house as the police led him to their car, and for a brief moment, his eyes met Danny's across the street. The look in those eyes was something Danny would never forget, a mixture of fear, anger, and something else that was harder to define. Possessiveness, maybe. As if Danny was the intruder, not him. The police officer who took Danny's statement was a veteran who'd seen everything, but even he seemed shaken by what they'd found in the attic. He's been up there for at least 3 weeks, maybe a month, the officer explained. Had a whole setup, sleeping bag, food containers, bottles for, well, you don't want to know. The smell up there is something else. How did he get in? Danny asked, still unable to process what had happened. Looks like he climbed that oak tree and got in through the attic window. It was broken, probably has been for years. Your landlord should have caught that, but I guess nobody ever thought to check. The officer went on to explain that the man was apparently homeless, with a history of mental illness but no violent crimes on his record. He'd probably chosen Danny's attic because it was warm, dry, and seemed unoccupied during the day when Danny was at school or work. The thing is, the officer said, lowering his voice, he knew your schedule. Had it written down on a piece of cardboard up there. What time you left in the morning, what time you came home, when you usually went to bed. He'd been studying you. That detail hit Danny like a physical blow. This stranger had been cataloging his life, learning his patterns, watching him like a specimen in a lab. The violation felt worse than if someone had robbed him or vandalized his property. Danny moved out the next day. He couldn't stand the thought of sleeping in that house, knowing that someone had been directly above him for weeks, listening to his phone calls, his music, his private moments. Every creak and settling sound would forever make him wonder if someone was up there, waiting and watching. The landlord was apologetic and refunded his deposit, but Danny could tell the man was more concerned about liability than about what Danny had been through. The attic window was repaired, the space was cleaned and sealed, but Danny was already gone by then. He found a new place across town, a second-floor apartment in a building with security cameras and coded entry. But even there, he found himself checking the ceilings obsessively, looking for any sign of hidden spaces or unauthorized access points. Every unexpected noise made him freeze and listen, wondering if he was truly alone. The image that haunted him most wasn't the dirty man being led away in handcuffs. It was the mental picture of himself going about his daily routine, sleeping, eating, relaxing, while someone crouched in the darkness just feet above his head, watching and waiting for God knew what. Danny never found out what the man's ultimate intentions had been. Was he just looking for shelter, or had he been planning something more sinister? The police said he'd been carrying a small knife when they found him, though whether for protection or offense was impossible to determine. Sometimes, late at night in his new apartment, Danny still finds himself staring at the ceiling and wondering if he's ever truly alone. The experience taught him that the monsters we fear aren't always strangers who break down doors in the middle of the night. Sometimes they're already inside, hidden in the spaces we never think to check, patient and watching, learning our patterns and waiting for their moment. The rain had stopped by the time Danny left his old house for the last time, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the storm inside his head would last much longer.